Friends, last week in Washington, something happened that had been taboo for even the boldest journalists for years. Susie Wiles, she's the White House Chief of Staff, by the way, the first woman in this position, and of course the closest person to President Trump. Standing at the podium during the ceremony, this heroic woman said something that left the room in a brief hush. She said, "I think we will still find out that he really won." She was talking about Donald Trump and that he won in 2020. In those states where we've all been used to counting for 5 years, he lost. But let's start with what happened at the Bacchanalia that was the Moscow parade. Friends, for 4 years in a row, we've been told that this war will never end, that Putin will die in a sauna. In the Kremlin, having intercourse with a 13-year-old Tatar boy before he stops feeding Russian boys to the crows in Donbass. That negotiations are a fairy tale for the naive, that the American president against Putin is like a lapdog against a bear, or, like a little dog against an elephant. And this week, the bear suddenly scratched himself and said, "You know what, guys, I think I'll go home." So what happened today? Who's lying? Who benefits from this war? And what should we do while Moscow and Kyiv are dividing up the bear's hide before it's even been killed? Editor, Sunday, May 9th, Moscow, Victory Parade. More precisely, what's left of it. There were barely any tanks at all. There were only 2.5 foreign guests, and even those were long retired. But the security was so tight it felt like North Korea celebrating Victory Day in blackout mode. The Kremlin is nervous. Well, it's clear why. Ukrainian drones now fly over Russia as freely as Aeroflot planes did over Soviet airports back in the day, only cheaper and more precise. And on that same day, Vladimir Vladimirovich appears in front of the camera and says, I quote, "I think it's coming to an end." The matter? Well, that very same SMO, the special military operation, which was supposed to end in 3.5 days, with a parade in Kyiv on the 5th day. It was supposed to end in February 2022. Well, of course it's coming to an end, but it's been going for 4 years already, and it's going very slowly. Apparently the road is long and the GPS is broken. And he adds, VV adds, "I'm ready to meet with Zelensky in Moscow." Well, or in a neutral country. Zelensky is expected to come for the bouquet. Let's roll back a day. Friday, May 8th. Donald Trump announces a 3-day ceasefire. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And a prisoner exchange. 1,000 for 1,000. The Kremlin nods. Well, Kyiv nods. For the first time in 4 years, the guns will go silent along the entire front line. And you know what's strange? That both sides for a moment admitted that they could actually stop shooting if they wanted to. Yes, an astonishing discovery. But before someone sits down to write a Nobel speech, wait. After all, with Putin, there's always a catch. He is the catch. He is a massive catch. With Putin, a catch isn't a bug, it's a feature. Already the next morning, his assistant, Yuri Ushakov, comes out and explains that, it wasn't Putin who said anything about peace or about Ukraine. And actually, he was silent, you just mistook his silence for a conversation. So, well, what did he mean? Ushakov said, "It's nothing much, just that Ukraine should withdraw its troops from all of Donbass." What? From all of it. Including this land, where Ukrainian soldiers are now standing and holding with their own bones, by the way. So modest, just a simple capitulation, and I almost thought, negotiations. He agrees to meet in Moscow or somewhere else. He adds, Zelensky is illegitimate, according to Ushakov. So he was legitimate on the 9th, but on the 8th he was illegitimate then. His term expired. The president, Zelensky's subordinate. So of course we'll meet with him, but everything he signs is invalid. So wait a second. If we meet with him, we meet with him. But if he signs anything, it's invalid. His term has expired. And if you don't leave all of Donbass, then we, as serious people, won't talk to you at all. And the next day the boss says, "I'm ready to meet with, do you understand anything? All right." So it's like, I'm inviting you to the wedding, but I want to let you know in advance that the marriage has already been annulled. Classic Kremlin style, as they say, chess. Shake hands and at the same time break a few fingers. And now, friends, let's see who's standing by the drone. Because Putin decides, that's a fairy tale for foreign correspondents on business trips. In reality, it's the clans who make the decisions, and each clan has its own, how should I put it, business plan, to put it smartly. The first clan, the security forces, well, that's the FSB, the GRU, and the immortal Patrushev family. Nikolai the father and Dmitry, I think, the son. Probably Dmitry the grandson is on the way. Yes, the grandson, so it's Nikolai, Dmitry. These guys, they're a product of war. War is their legitimacy, their budget, their cover. Without war, well, it's chow for them, right? Officials in uniforms with big bellies, hanging out. But with war, they're the masters of the country. Take 3 guesses what they want. The second clan. Misi. Military-industrial complex. Sergei Chemezov, Rostek, multi-billion-dollar contracts. These people are making money that probably hasn't been seen since the days of Leonid Ilyich. Factories run 3 shifts, and shells are even exported to North Korea. Yeah, so now the mistress of the USSR, now the Russian Federation, is exporting to North Korea. Look where we've ended up. For them, war is like a pension fund. And not just one, it's the third clan. Oligarch substitutes. Those who bought up McDonald's, IKEA, and Renault for next to nothing. And, well, for next to nothing, okay, let's not argue, right? Their fortunes grew because of the sanctions. They should thank the West. What will these guys gain? What will they get from the war? Contracts, cover for repressions, the opportunity to seize whatever they want under the slogan, he's a foreign agent, I must take it away. Replacing Western corporations, money from oil flowing through India and Turkey with a discount but in large volumes, and the sweetest patriotic hysteria, which perfectly distracts the population from the fact that, well, there hasn't been any asphalt in the Tver region for a long time. What are they losing? If the war ends, that's it. Plus attention, the men are coming back from the front. Angry, armed. Many of them after serving in penal colonies and penal battalions. But the most pleasant social group will be called, of course, something like the Ukrainian syndrome. After Afghanistan, there was the Afghan syndrome. After Chechnya, there was the Chechen syndrome. And now they're screwed. They're screwed because no one has ever been pounded this hard for this long before. And most importantly, without an external enemy, the clans start, how should I put it, eating each other. That's the law of nature in the Russian Federation. It's like an aquarium of piranhas. As long as meat is tossed in, there's peace. When it stops, they eat each other. What can they gain if the war ends? Well, if the war ends the right way. A frozen conflict. The annexed territories are de facto recognized. Some sanctions will be lifted. Europe always lifts them. Europe has a short memory and long gas bills, which is very important. Time to take a break, rearm, and in 5 to 7 years do it all over again. Already with corrections for past mistakes. Georgia of 1928 taught Ukraine of 1922. Ukraine will teach someone else something. It's a matter of time, not desire. Absolutely, they need to make money again. Everything's already built and divided. Now new predators are here. Time to profit. Let's go to Ukraine. That's why there's a split in the Kremlin. Security forces want endless fighting. Without a break. Freeze the money with profit. And the quietest ones have long built houses in Dubai. Houses in Dubai. They rehearse interviews. I didn't know anything. And Putin is trying to balance. His time is coming to an end. This is not a signal to the West. This is an internal signal. Guys, I hear you. Maybe someday, if you're lucky, hang in there. But there is another country, as it turns out. There's Kyiv. Kyiv exists, yes. We thought there was only one Russia. It turns out there's also Kyiv. And here, friends, things change so abruptly that half the world's correspondents still haven't had time to update their lists, swap out their folders. I don't know what it's called. Just 6 months ago, at the center of Zelensky's circle was Andriy Yermak, head of the president's office, the shadow president, as he was called. A shadow so big it blocked out the sun itself, which the sun didn't always like. Personnel went through him, money went through him, access went through him. Foreign diplomats quietly complained. "You talk to Zelensky," Yermak answers, "or you go to Zelensky." And Yermak, wherever you go, Yermak. Out of the bathroom, Yermak, everywhere. And then on November 28, 2025, Nebu. The Ukrainian Anti-Corruption Bureau, which is not subordinate, not to Yermak, not to Zelensky, but is subordinate to someone else entirely. We obey whoever we are supposed to obey. They raided Yermak's apartment. The next day, resignation. No applause, no farewell, not even the usual step down voluntarily to pursue a new challenge. So what happened? Just a minor energoatom scandal. The biggest corruption case in the entire Zelensky era. In the recordings published by Nabu, there's a figure known by the nickname Ali Baba. Guess who, according to a leak from their own bureau, is identified as Ali Baba? Guess correctly. The first letter starts with the last letter of the Latin alphabet. Well, it's not Pushkin or Lermontov, right? And where did Yermak go? Yeah, according to the official reports, he was going to the front, supporting the front lines. That's a wonderful Ukrainian euphemism, as they say, friends. To the front. It's political Siberia, but just a bit more dangerous. They still shoot there. That's how they neutralized former Defense Minister Reznikov. When? In 23. That's how they neutralized a few others as well. It means disappeared from politics, but formally still in the system for now. If he survives, well, he'll bide his time. And if he doesn't survive, well, the music will play very loudly and very sadly. And pay attention. This is the key point. On January 2nd, 2026, Kirill Budanov replaces Yermak, the same Budanov who had led the main intelligence directorate for 5 years before that. That means military intelligence. The man is 39 years old, a military intelligence officer. Former, well, without any trail of corruption schemes, although there are constant rumors. They say that some African countries were very pleased with the tanks that Budanov supplied them, well, let's say for a small amount of money, for half of what they were worth, because he got them for free himself. Where did he get them from? Search me. But these are just rumors. Everyone who spread these rumors is at the bottom of the sea. Long ago, but he was planning strikes on the Crimean Bridge, on the Black Sea, on Russian oil refineries. What does that mean? It means, my friends, that the tectonics of Kiev have shifted. The era of Yermak, the era of the shadow prime minister who controlled everything, was responsible for everything, and was never held accountable himself, is over. A new era has begun, where next to the president sits a man who is used to planning sabotage behind enemy lines, not kickbacks on jacket purchases. Now, let's be honest. Who did this and why? The first version. Zelensky himself, just on his own, decided to clean up his inner circle to bolster his negotiating credibility. It's hard to come to the negotiating table, so to speak, with a team that is dogged by Nebu tapes. The second version, a more pragmatic one. Washington, the Trump administration openly hinted. Openly hinted means they just said it straight to your face. Since the fall of 2025, there would be no Western money for reconstruction. But until Zelensky's inner circle goes through a purge, we won't even talk to you. And now the purge has begun. An amazing coincidence, isn't it? Third version, the most likely one. Both things happened at once, and Zelensky decided to free himself from his guardian, and the Americans applied pressure, and everything lined up so well that it was like, oh, it wasn't me, it was the Americans. And no, the person went to the front, of his own free will. Zelensky did what was necessary, presenting it as if we made the decision ourselves. That's it. That Zelensky's current circle benefits from the continuation of the war. Martial law is extended every 90 days. Elections are prohibited. There is no choice. The presidential term expired sometime in May 2024, but the president remained in office, so the term expired. the term is over, but the president did not leave. They found a clause in the Constitution. It's called the Eternal Perpetuum Mobile. That's basically Zelensky's last name. The opposition is in limbo. Poroshenko is not allowed to leave the country. Not allowed to leave the country. Well, that's right. Why should he leave? There's no reason. What would he do? He's fine in Ukraine. The channels are closed. The Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate is under investigation. Western aid continues to flow, although the stream is already meager and conditional. Hundreds of billions in weapons, grants. But Trump now ties every tranche to specific steps. Cleaning up corruption, reforms, progress in negotiations, and so on. Now, what do they lose if the war ends? Martial law will be lifted. That means there must be elections. Elections. Oh, horror, there must be elections. And that's when, my friends, the real circus begins. It turns out that Zelensky has a rival.
Вызрел.
Valera Zaluzhny has emerged. As I was told, he's politically timid, but he gained courage. Former commander-in-chief, now ambassador in London. So he managed to succeed both there and here. According to Ukrainian polls, he's far more popular than Zelensky, a heroic figure. There's no trace of corruption around him. On the contrary, they tell stories about how he interfered, tried to prevent it, and so on. And supposedly that's why he was dismissed, for trying to prevent corruption. If he returns to the country and shows up, it will be tough for Zelensky. Poroshenko will show up. Klitschko will show up. Tymoshenko, by the way, hasn't gone anywhere. She's waiting. She waits and watches from around the corner. But that's not even the main thing. The main thing is immunity. With Rybak's resignation, it became clear the extraordinary immunity of martial law is cracking. Nebu is working. The Americans are bastards. Sometimes they give it a kick in the pants. SAP is working too.
Да, там
Bikus Info, Ukrainska Pravda, Skemi. They publish materials. And now their windows aren't being shot out anymore. And no one is beating anyone with iron rods. The rods have run out. And after martial law is lifted, this process will only speed up, not stop. That's what's frustrating. You might say, I could have stolen 4 times more. I left some for the people. I didn't steal everything. And yet you're still punished for it. Who's next after Yermak? The names that are whispered in Kyiv include Reznikov. Well, officially, they're already investigating him. Several energy sector figures and deputies from the Servant of the People Party. Well, those who are under Arachemia. And that's why he was running his mouth for a while. Possibly some from Yermak's former inner circle, who are now frantically looking for lawyers in Zurich and Dubai. This is no longer a prediction, gentlemen. It's a process. As Comrade, you know, the one with the spot on his forehead, Gorbachev used to say. What did he say? Nachale, right? Nachale. There we go. Well, he used to say it in a very funny way. He put the emphasis in the wrong place. And the Trump administration is signaling to Kyiv. Every person you jail before the elections boosts trust. The more you put in, the more trust you get. Every name you hide means less money. If you hide someone, cover them up, you get less money. But what can they gain if the war ends the right way? Zelensky's historical legacy. A president who held the country together in its darkest hour. He will remain in textbooks, lectures, schools, books, and foundations bearing his name. Budanov is a real political heavyweight of the future. Even now, he is being mentioned as one of the possible presidential candidates. If he manages to come out of the war with a reputation as someone who negotiated firmly and without corruption, that's a path to the presidency. Well, through elections, so he might be against Zaluzhny. Tens of billions for reconstruction, a huge pie, a lot of money. The path to the EU is accelerating. It's unclear why he needs this, but for some reason they want it. And personal safety, which is the most important thing, it's no longer the #1 target for the Kremlin's polonium chefs. But all of this, if they leave power, is deserved. And we've already seen how Yermak leaves through a search at the BU and a euphemism for the front. This, friends, is the new normal, and it's much healthier than the old one, just between us girls. Now let's get back to, as they say, Putin. Why did he suddenly blink right now? 3 reasons. All three are prosaic. There's nothing mystical about it. There's no mysticism in this at all. There's no mysticism in Russia at all. Although there are bonds, there's no mysticism. First, the Russian economy is devouring itself. The sanctions are hitting harder than Russia admits. For example, oil prices have dropped. Ukrainian drones are systematically destroying Russian oil refineries 1,000 kilometers from the front. In the Krasnodar region, gasoline is rationed with coupons, just like during Gorbachev's time. Russia is losing young men faster than they are being born. A new mobilization is taboo because the last one almost brought down the regime. Second, Donald Trump. Father Kenshin, right? What? You haven't thought about him? But I know my listeners all think different things about him. He did what 3 years of NATO summits, EU communiques, and touching Swiss conferences with buffers and signatures couldn't do. About nothing. Shall we sign? Of course we'll sign. Will we debate? Of course we'll dismantle. He picked up the phone, Trump. He told Putin, shut off the valve. No one is buying oil. Your buddies in Dubai will have to walk home. The Kremlin only moves when they feel the cold in their wallets. Third, the Russian people themselves. A reduced parade, not a coincidence. Gentlemen, this is not a coincidence. I'm telling you this now while talking about the parade, on purpose so you understand. The Kremlin knows for sure. Mothers, widows, fathers of soldiers. There's a word for it in Russian, right? Obridlo, in the Russian language, right? Obridlo, they're tired. That means they're fed up, sick and tired. They're so exhausted that even propaganda can't keep up. It's coming to an end. This isn't for the West. This isn't said for the West. It's for Aunt Tanya from Kaluga and Uncle Vasya from Magadan, so that they can endure just a little longer. Just a bit. Well, just a bit more. One more winter. There are 3 roads. You choose anyone. First, real peace. Trump applies pressure. Both sides sit down. Ukraine keeps its sovereignty, gets real security guarantees. The 1994 memorandum, a piece of paper whose signatures lasted only until the first breeze. It's ugly, it's unfair, it's frustrating. No one in Ukraine even read it. Just, oh, they're guaranteeing us. Second, a freeze. A 3-day truce stretches into 30 days, then into 90 days, then indefinitely. The front line gets sealed in concrete. It freezes. Korea, 1953. Only through living Slavic flesh. Will it freeze the conflict? A beautiful word. It sounds almost mundane, like how do you freeze a chicken? In the same way, I remember Georgian villages were cut apart. This area is in the Soviet Union and that one is in Turkey. They meet and show each other how things are. A brother or relative lives there. And to come to a wedding, if they let you, you had to go all the way around the world to hell and back. Through Tbilisi, Moscow, Ankara, and then come back and wave to your wife like everything is fine. I arrived. Everything's fine here. Third, breakdown. Negotiations collapse. The war drags into the 5th and 6th year. New cemeteries, new mothers in black, new episodes. Everything is controlled from headquarters. Everything is being kept stable by the Kremlin. Which path will they choose? Probably depends on the pressure, including pressure from us, of course. What needs to be done, in my opinion? Act. Share this broadcast with one friend. I need more. Just one, right? With the one who 3 years ago gave up and went to watch cooking shows and TikToks. That's it. The world is built by those who refuse to turn away. It's always like that. Tyranny is built by those who agreed. Plus. Gentlemen. Read. Read things that you can easily spend an hour and a half a day on things that brainwash you. Take Berdyaev again, for example. The Philosophy of Inequality. Read it. About the fact that freedom is not equality for everyone in poverty, but the right of a person to be themselves. Andrew Galambos, for those who know English, for those who don't, but in the end, at least listen to my lectures. I have a separate channel called Roadmap to Freedom. Find it. Listen to it. There are 10-minute lectures there. It's all easy. That's it. He called it the science of freedom. No person owns another person. The state does not own the citizen. A Russian conscript in a crater near Bakhmut. A Ukrainian mother burying her son, both victims. And with the same disease. Victims of the state. It doesn't matter what it's called. It's still a state that decided it owns your lives. You have to get used to the fact that this isn't true. You have to get used to the fact that you're being played, that you're being deceived, that you're suckers. They treat you like suckers. And until you understand this, you will continue to be suckers. That's the truth. And here's the good news, which I want to use to wrap up this topic with you for today. Wars don't end when dictators get tired of playing. Wars end when free people on both sides of the border say, bastard. Enough. So, the good news, a crack has appeared. Someone blinked. For the first time in 4 years, a man in the Kremlin admitted to his own people, on the most sacred day of the state's whole clown show, that this can't go on forever. The door, my friends, has opened a little, not wide yet, but it's ajar. The Berlin Wall didn't fall because Gorbachev was a good man. Reagan spoke eloquently. It fell because ordinary Germans on the eastern side decided that they were free before the wall came down. The wall just caught up with them. Ukrainians decided that they were free. In February 2022, many Russians are now deciding this in whispers in their kitchens through VPNs. And we in America, in the last great experiment of human freedom, are obliged to keep the lamp burning. So tyranny never prevails anywhere, not in others' yards or our own. There's already enough, even without Putin. Go through this door. Push it. Pull others along with you. That's also very important. Well, all right. Back to Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, who said, I think we'll still find out that he actually won. That's Donald Trump, won in 2020 in those states where, as we've been told for 5 years in a row, he supposedly lost. Go. And a few days earlier, FBI Director Kash Patel said on Fox News, we have evidence. And he strongly hinted at an imminent arrest. And Trump himself, who has been saying for 5 years, the election was stolen. The election was stolen. Now he adds to this mantra, we have evidence. The election was stolen. We have evidence. What's true here? What's politics? Did he try to defend this in court in 2020, and why did he lose? And most importantly, what does this mean for the midterm elections, for which only 7 months are left? Only 7 months first, the facts. What was said? A word, so that you all understand. So Wells on May 8th at a dinner of the Independent Women's Forum tells how after the 2020 election, Trump invited her to Mar-a-Lago, and they discussed why he won Florida but somehow strangely lost in several other states. And she adds, I think we'll find out more. Kash Patel, FBI. Either on April 19th or 20th. On the Sunday morning news show, we have evidence. She clarifies, the investigation of 2020 is now coming together into one big conspiracy. The investigation that is being conducted, well, we always have some kind of center where everything is coordinated. In Miami, they decided to set up this center, and it is being run from Miami, in parallel with the case of Brennan Comey, which we talked about last week. And the key figure whom few people have paid attention to is Kurt Olson, a lawyer who for years promoted the theory of fraud in the 2020 election and is now working inside the White House. According to reports, he gained access to classified materials from the intelligence community related to the 2020 elections. Plus, as I also mentioned, Joseph DeGeneva, a veteran and Republican prosecutor, he was appointed as an advisor to Attorney General Todd Blanche. On April 20, his task is to handle the major conspiracy. That is the case about the major conspiracy. All of this is now coming together, forming not as several separate cases, but as one big case. I've already explained why this matters. The statute of limitations is automatically extended, so let's not discuss it further. So these are not isolated statements. This is a coordinated campaign from the White House, from the FBI, from the Department of Justice, simultaneously. Now, the accusations that have been made for 5 years already, I'll list them one by one so we really know. First, delays in counting. I mean, what were the oddities during the 2020 election? On election night, Trump was ahead. In Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, somewhere around 2 in the morning, I personally in California went to sleep knowing that Trump had won. At 5 in the morning, my daughter woke me up and said, "You should know that Biden is winning." So in the 3 hours during those 3 hours of the night, that's 5 in the morning.
Утра.
On the other side, add 3 hours, and something happened during those 3 hours. Why? Some states by law did not allow mail-in ballots to be opened before Election Day, and there were many times more mail-in ballots than usual. This is explained by the pandemic, COVID. Republicans mostly voted in person on Election Day, while Democrats voted by mail. That's why, as they say, the red ballots came in first and then the blue ones. This is not proof of fraud, but it creates fertile ground for suspicion. And in many states, the procedures were changed. That is, the way everything happened during the elections, the counting and so on, was suddenly changed by the governors, bypassing the legislatures. This, my friends, is a real constitutional problem. Serious lawyers are still arguing about this. If you suddenly change the processes by which elections are conducted just 2 to 3 weeks before they start, that's not how it's described in the Constitution. Yes, that's what we have there. Second, expulsion of Republican observers. In the center in Detroit, the famous footage of taped-up windows, a crowd of Republican observers behind the doors. Officially, it's a COVID restriction, no entry allowed, everyone will get infected. Because there were supposedly a lot of people in the room, but in reality they weren't there. They were standing behind the glass at a distance. It was impossible to see anything there. The Michigan Bureau of Elections conducted an internal investigation. Procedural violations were recorded, but no evidence of vote fraud was found. How can they confirm it? They've already been counted. However, the very issue of observing the vote count is sacrosanct. If there are no observers, there are suspicions. That's the law, and here the Democrats really messed up. Third, blank ballots, suitcases with ballots. The main episode, State Farm Arena in Atlanta. A video showing a worker taking a box of ballots out from under the table. After the observers were told that work was done for the night break, the Republicans left, and suddenly they started pulling out some boxes with some ballots from under the table. So, prosecutors in Georgia tried to investigate this case. They concluded that these were regular containers with ballots already prepared for counting. Just a second. But if you said that work was stopping and everyone should leave and everyone left, why did a few people come back and suddenly start working? Out of nowhere, for no reason. So the observers were taken out of the room for some reason, but again, nothing could be proven. There was no violation of procedure and falsification was not proven, because the law is not written in such a way that if there was falsification, it is immediately canceled. Instead, after that, you still have to prove something else. Fourth, fake driver's licenses and votes from non-citizens. A decade-long campaign to simplify voter registration. Through the Departments of Motor Vehicles in California, New York, and Illinois, voter registration was simplified, and illegal immigrants began getting driver's licenses, but by law, they can't vote. However, the control is weak, especially since in these states they turned a blind eye when these people came in. There are specific cases of proven fraud, dozens, hundreds, but they haven't caught enough to overturn the election on that scale. It's not proven, the problem is real, and it's getting worse. And fifth, this is China and Dominion. Dominion, I don't know how to put it. The devices that counted the votes, this is the most sensitive topic. They were allegedly connected to servers in Germany or in Venezuela. China and Iran were uploading ballots and the algorithms were flipping votes from one to another, but they didn't prove it. And Fox News had to pay $787.5 million, I think, because of the lawsuit. Dominion said, "You slandered us. You didn't prove anything. Go ahead, prove it." That doesn't mean China wasn't interfering in American politics. They are interfering. Through TikTok, through all sorts of university donations, through Hunter Biden, but that's a specific story. Dominion was flipping votes. They couldn't prove it again. They suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story. Here. Now, there's a myth that needs to be busted because it prevents people from understanding what's going on. They say 60 courts refused to take the case. That's not entirely true. No offense to anyone. Here are the real statistics. Trump's team and his allies filed 62 lawsuits in 9 states. Out of those, 30 cases were considered on their merits, with hearings, witnesses, and expert examinations. Some were dismissed on procedural grounds. That is, the plaintiff did not have the legal right to file. Some were withdrawn by Trump's own lawyers. Now pay attention. Here is the key fact. Among the federal judges who considered the cases, 12 were appointed by Trump himself. Not one of them ruled in Trump's favor, not a single one. These were not liberal activists. These were his own appointees, including judges confirmed by the Senate with the support of Mitch McConnell. Only one single case was won in Pennsylvania, on a minor technical issue about the deadline for submitting identification documents. It turned out to be a few thousand votes, but it didn't affect the outcome of the election. Why is that? Not because the judges conspired, but because American courts operate on a simple principle: show me the evidence that can be verified. Rumors, charts, statistical anomalies, and theories don't work. What works is a name, a date, a ballot, a witness under oath. In the end, in 2020, Trump's team couldn't produce enough of it. And now in 2026, Patel says, we have exactly what we didn't have back then. And Wells says, we'll find out. All right, show it. Well, not on a talk show. In court, because for us, ordinary people, yes. We're a bit tired of hearing, he's stealing and no one proves it, he's lying. I really hope that this time it will be different and so on. But why did all this commotion start right now, 5 years after the event? There are several reasons. First, Trump already has power, the Justice Department and the FBI. There's everything else there. Access to classified materials that were previously unavailable. If something can be found, now it can be found. Second, this is politically synchronized with the big conspiracy case. Well, about 2016, the one we talked about, or last week. Gabbard revealed materials about the falsification of the Brennan-Clapper-Comey intelligence assessment. The same circle, Brennan, Clapper, and Comey are mentioned in the discussion about 2020. It's a single picture. It's all kind of together. Like it started and never stopped. An attempt by the intelligence community and the party machine. Well, that very party that we don't really like. First to smear Trump, then to remove him, then, according to the White House, not to let him back in. Third, the midterm elections are approaching. How long until then? Well, 7 months. The Republicans know that to carry out electoral reform, they need both the House and the Senate. The noise around 2020 is mobilizing the base, our core voters. And fourth, the real strategic objective. If by 2026, November, if we manage to show the public at least some confirmed violations, it will change public attitudes toward electoral reforms. That means voter ID, cleaning up the voter lists, limiting the uncontrolled mailing of ballots, stricter monitoring. These are real political goals. They are achievable when voters start actively supporting them and telling their members of Congress and senators, why are you just sitting there and not doing anything about it? Do I believe that they have evidence? An honest, straightforward answer, I don't know. I swear, that's called cautious skepticism. Why skepticism? Because Pateri Bondi has been promising arrests this week for 6 months already. But the arrests just aren't happening. Because Lindell, Powell, Giuliani have been promising the Kraken for 5 years, and there was no Kraken. Because when they say from the White House, a bombshell revelation is coming soon, usually that revelation turns out to be much quieter than the announcement. Why cautious? Because some violations really did happen. They really did. Illegal changes to procedures in several states. They really did happen. Suppression of stories about the laptop. That really happened. Restrictions on observers in Detroit. Really happened. I saw all of this on TV, just in real time. If the new Justice Department under Blanche and Diginoff manages to put these episodes together into a legal case that can withstand an appeal, that would already be a serious result. That would already be grounds for reform. And then you could go to Congress and the Senate and make demands. But I'm not expecting it. And I ask you not to expect that there will be a big red folder that says Xi Jinping and Barack Obama together rigged the votes, stole them, and so on, like Hillary Clinton stole from Bernie Anderson. About 5 million were moved from Bernie Anderson's column, and she left. That won't happen. If anything happens, it will be procedural violations, pressure on officials, illegal collusion between big tech and intelligence agencies, maybe specific incidents, ballot forgeries. Seriously, it's unpleasant for the Democrats, but without the so-called matrix effect. And will there be an electoral effect? There will be, of course, but it could be mixed. Trump's base will definitely mobilize. That was already their main motivation. They stole from us. Now they will have official confirmation of this motivation. They will go to the 2026 elections with triple the determination, which is exactly what we want. Independent voters will look at the evidence. If something substantial is presented, they will turn toward the Republicans. If it's just a dud, they'll feel deceived and turn the other way. And these elections will rest on their shoulders. The Democrats are splitting. Some will defend the 2020 narrative to their last drop of piss. Some, especially the young people disappointed by the party's failure under Biden, will start to silently agree. Well, yeah, there was something like that. There probably was. That's the second group. A real electoral revolution might happen. The schedule is tight. The midterms are in November 2026. Right now, as you understand, we don't have many months left. What can be accomplished in that time? A grand jury. Yes, it can be convened within a month. Charges can be brought within 23 months if the materials are ready. Actual sentences, no, that takes years. Appeals take even more years. But that's not the point. Disclosure of evidence, declassification of documents, congressional hearings. All of this is possible before November. That's what's politically important. And we need to end the war in Iran. Otherwise, no one will pay attention to this. So the question is, will they have time to prosecute? They won't have time to prosecute. Will they have time to show it? Yes. And this, my friends, is a completely different discipline. This is PR. Backed by a criminal case file. What am I asking you to do? First, demand evidence from both sides. Show the evidence from Wells and from the Democrats. Explain the already confirmed episodes one by one. Don't believe the headlines. Do you see the headline? Look through it. Don't pay attention to it. Move on. In almost 90% of cases, I find that the article or the video claims things that are directly opposite to what was stated in the headline. So, in addition, support electoral reform at the state level. Where do you live? That's where you should work on it. Voter ID? At the state level. Cleaning up voter rolls? At the state level. Limiting uncontrolled mailings? At the state level. Observers with real access? At the state level. This is not a partisan position. This is a civic position. And third, don't let results take the place of procedure. If the procedures are violated, they need to be fixed, regardless of who benefits from it, regardless of whether you like the result or not. Freedom stands on procedures, not on sympathies. Today they broke the rules and, as they say, you liked it. And tomorrow they'll break the rules again, but someone else will like it. A republic, ladies and gentlemen, is not just about votes, it's about trust in those votes. If citizens believe that the elections are fair, the republic stands. If they don't believe, it falls. That's why the procedure is more important than the result. Sorry, but that's always the case. Berdyaev again. Well, I love him. Well, what can I do? He wrote in The Philosophy of Inequality, freedom presupposes discipline of the spirit. Discipline, that is the ability to maintain your moral standard even when you are in power, especially when you are in power. And Hillel also has another one, as you probably know, my favorite character. The same idea. If you want your elections not to be rigged, don't rig someone else's. If you don't want to be kicked out as an observer, don't kick others out. A simple rule, 2,000 years old. Still hasn't been mastered. Good news. For the first time in 5 years, the 2020 election discussion isn't on Twitter or in bars, but in the Justice Department and Congress. If evidence exists, it will be shown. If not, it will be clear none exists. In either case, we will learn the truth. And the truth, my friends, is generally better than any myth,
Даже
even if it's uncomfortable. This was Leon Vainstein. Don't take anyone's word for it, not even those on your side. It's terrible what I just said. But don't take anyone's word for it, not even those on your side. Because when I'm on your side, it's so easy to believe them. And remember, the only side worth being on is the side of truth. Goodbye, until we meet again.